it's important. I think sometimes people get caught up in the labels are the villains. They screwed over the artist, but what they don't see is that the artist risked perhaps millions of dollars they could have easily just lost.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Top Music Attorney podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, Leslie Zigel. He is an entertainment attorney. And, Leslie and I have known each other for a long time. And Leslie has done amazing things in the music industry. He continues to do it. We have a lot of stuff we're going to jump into. And this is going to be a really good interview. If you're not only an entertainment attorney in general, but an artist or someone in the music business. So first of all, hello, Leslie. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Krystle. Great to be here.
All right. So I figured a good place to start is just a quick overview with your background. From what I understand, you started in the jazz scene. You were doing kind of the, maybe street team stuff. It sounded like you actually started earlier than that. You're getting the coffee. So give me a little bit of your background of how you started in the music business.
So actually, my first real gig, I guess, I was in high school, and for my senior internship, I was a roadie for a band called Cowboy Jazz in Baltimore. So that was setting up equipment, setting up drums, hauling equipment, all those sorts of things. And it was great because I was 17 and getting to go into bars with this band. But after that, I went to college, and I went to a jazz festival, and I said, this is what I want to do. Researched it, found out a guy named George Wein produced that festival, but he also produced the Newport Jazz Festival starting in the 50s, kind of the grandfather of the music festivals, also did Newport Folk, did New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. So I harassed his office until I got a job. I got an internship there, a summer internship working on the Pittsburgh Jazz Festival, and about 8 months later, I got hired by his number two, a guy named John Schreiber, to be his assistant. So I moved to New York City.
Now, when you say harassment, let's talk about that, because when it comes to someone wanting to break into the music business, it might be someone who's not obviously an attorney, but they want to get started. And so obviously we'll say, well, do an internship, right? Hit someone up, be like, I'll work for free, whatever it is. So when you say harassing, what are you doing? Are you sending letters? You're calling? You showing up?
So I was in college. I started sending letters. I got a nice letter back saying they had nothing available. I moved back to Baltimore, where I grew up. My father, his only connection to the music business was he was a big opera fan, so he introduced me to the GM of the opera. I met with him, told him what I wanted to do, and he said I should meet this woman named Janetta Jones, who runs Artscape, which was a music festival. So I went to her, told her what I wanted to do, and she said, oh, have you met John Schreiber? I said, I'd love to, but I can't get him on the phone. And she said, well, he books our festival. Next time he's in town, I'll let you know.
Love that.
2 weeks later, I got a call, and she said, he's in town, call him at this number. So I called him. Turns out he was meeting with a big sponsor. I interrupted him from his meeting. He came out and he said, hi, this is John. I said, hi, this is Leslie Zigel. I don't know if you remember me. I've been trying to meet you. Interested in what you do. Could I buy you a cup of coffee? And he said, well, I'm about to leave after this, but call me at my office tomorrow, and then the next time I'm here, we'll get together. It is a fine line between being a stalker and being persistent. But in any event, I called him the next day. When you talk about persistence and how to break into the business, I spent those 6 weeks getting to know everyone I could get to know who did anything related to music in Baltimore. And so when I met him backstage at this venue, when he showed up, he started to introduce me to everyone there. Everyone already knew me, which I think was somewhat helpful. And I also, after that call, I sent him a follow-up letter. Looking forward to our meeting. Here's a copy of my portfolio. Very interested in what you do. Looking forward to meeting with you. So part of it is follow-up, diligence. He knew who I was. So we sat down to talk, and 30 seconds into the conversation, he said, I'm going to offer you a gig. And I almost fell off my chair.
And so then obviously we see the progression of now you're doing not more meaningful work, right? But there's more duty, obligation. And then you actually got into tour managing. Is that right?
I did whatever needed to get done. And one of the things that I can't say enough to people that want to start out is whatever it is that you get assigned to do it better than anyone else has done it if you want to move the next level up. Make the best coffee possible. Show up early. Check in bags at the airport. Do whatever you have to do, and you'll grow.
So as you're progressing, and I love what you're saying as far as whatever you're going to do, don't just do it well, do it great. Always go above and beyond. Right. That's something that I think that, that's a sentiment that you should carry always, including the actual practice of being an attorney. There's a reason why you are Pitbull's attorney. You continue to be Pitbull's attorney all these years. So we're going to jump back into obviously the progression of your career, but since I jumped into it, let's talk about Pitbull for a second.
Okay.
All right. So the kind of introduction and how you got involved in all of that, my understanding was that you basically was hired to do a deal with Dr. Pepper. It was an ad agency, and it was in connection, obviously, with Pitbull. And then from there was an initial, obviously, interaction. And then later on, he gave you a call and he wanted to have a meeting. Is that right?
Pretty much. I got a call from his manager on a Saturday, and that's another lesson. If somebody calls you on a Saturday, pick up the phone. You don't wait till Monday to call him back. So I get a call from his manager on Saturday and said, Pitt wants to meet with you. And I said, okay, about what? Because he had an attorney at the time who I know, who I'm still friendly with. And he said, well, he's shopping. He wants to explore other options. I said, I'd be happy to meet with him. So he came to my office. I met with him. It was like a scene out of Entourage, because it was him, the manager, the turtle, all the characters were there. And he asked me to do some work for him, and I started to do some work for him. And then from there, it just progressed, and now going on 13 years that I've been representing him.
And then as far as, his team, often we hear there's not just one manager, right? There's a team of managers with different positions. Is it the same? I know you're general counsel, but do you have also a team of attorneys with what you're doing, or is it basically you and you might delegate?
Well, there's two questions in that. So one, within an artist always has an entourage. They will have, in some cases, managers. They'll have personal managers. They might have accountants or business managers. They may have friends that they've known for a long time that kind of tag along. And it's always a delicate dance as you come into a new team, because it's very important to get to know everyone and work with everyone. I think that sometimes attorneys may have a chip on their shoulder that they, somehow are above the production manager or the stage manager or the guitar tech. But I've always found I really try to interact with everyone and get to know everyone, because I think it's the right thing to do. And as you start to understand everyone's roles as a lawyer, you can become you can serve the client better when you understand everything that's involved: the cadence of touring, the cadence of production, how they set up, issues that arise with rigging. There's a whole host of different things that happen, and it's really important to get to know everyone on the team.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so then on the day-to-day, right? I know that's a burning question for a lot of people who don't know what it is to be an entertainment attorney, but specifically to be Pitbull's entertainment attorney, right? So on the day-to-day, are you getting the calls from Pitbull and he's saying, this guy broke, he breached the contract, and now you're having to go to war and show up like in the Suits show and have the verbal altercation? What is the reality of what it's like to be Pitbull's actual attorney?
That's not the reality. What you just described. The reality is different. And listen, every artist is different. And there's several other superstars that I work with as well. But in his case, Armando, that's how he introduced himself to me. So I've never called him Pitbull. I always call him Armando. But he is very thoughtful. He's very smart. He does have management, but we interact quite a bit directly. Over the years, it's varied. Sometimes we're talking almost every day, sometimes every couple of weeks. It really just depends on the rhythm of what's going on. But I work with him on all of the various deals. I break them down financially for him so he understands what his obligations are. If there's issues and we need to get out of a contract, I handle all of those negotiations. He is not very litigious. He is not, despite what some may think, given his name and the breed of animal, he is not, that sort of kind of, attacking, pummeling someone to do things. He's much more thoughtful and actually, quite a good businessman, and very, very, very genial in his communication.
Now, without personally knowing Pitbull, I would say I believe you when you say that, because I know you and how you conduct yourself as a professional, right? And I feel that, like attorneys, like clients, right? There's similarities and you find with the attorneys that are retained by the clients. And when we had another conversation a little while ago, you had been saying it's very important in this industry to maintain your relationships and don't just go underhanded, don't go into the mud and be getting into fights unnecessarily. So talk to us a little bit. Why is that important, specifically in entertainment?
Sure. I mean, I think it's important in entertainment. I think it's important in most businesses, but especially in entertainment. There tends to be a knee-jerk reaction to take advantage of gotcha moments, as I like to say. So what's a gotcha moment? So let's say I negotiated with opposing counsel to do a deal and they were going to pay my client 5%. Opposing counsel sends me the contract and it says 7%. There's two things that I could do. I could either say, he made a mistake, let's sign it and screw him and we got the 7%, which is how some people would act. What I tend to do in those situations is I pick up the phone and I call the attorney, say his name is Bob. Hey, Bob, thanks so much for sending the agreement. I was noticing that you put on here 7%. In my notes, it said 5%. If you guys change your mind and want to pay us more, we're thrilled and happy to do it. But I just wanted to check with you before I come back with comments. And 9 times out of 10, oh, thank you so much for calling me. And mind you, oftentimes I'll get an email from opposing counsel. They'll copy their clients, the business manager, all the various folks. And if I would hit reply to all and say, thanks for this, you made a mistake because you did this.
Sure.
What does that
Sure.
achieve for me? Well, I can say, well, he made a mistake and I didn't, but all of us make mistakes at some point in our lives. But by calling him up, it creates a sense of trust with opposing counsel that I'm going to be straightforward with him. And the reason this is important is no deal, goes exactly as it states in the contract. Inevitably, one side or the other side is going to have an issue with the way the contract is drafted because that's just the way life is. Things change. So I have to have the ability to call that person and say, listen, the circumstances has changed. I need to make this change or that change or vice versa. And if I have a trusting relationship with opposing counsel where they go back to their client and say, well, Leslie called and said this, this, and this, and their first question is, do you trust him? Yes, I trust him. He's always been very straightforward. That's really, really important to have that sort of human capital at your disposal because especially in entertainment, you end up doing deals with the same people over and over and over again. And I have, I think a pretty good reputation in the industry right now where anybody asks about me, they know that I'm a straight shooter and that I'm a good negotiator. I'm tough and I'm serious about it. But I also make my clients a lot of money and keep them out of lawsuits as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think that's a very wise takeaway, not just for attorneys watching this, but also just anyone in the entertainment field, right? So if you are a business owner or an artist, it's the same thing. It's such a big community to be in, but it's such a small one as well. And you find that especially as you start to scale in your career, you start to run into the same people over and over and over, and that reputation does follow you. And so don't think that just because it's the very beginning of your career and who knows what could happen. I've heard insane stories about people in lesser positions being the heads of big record labels later on, and it does make a difference. So very important point. Now let's talk about, you were saying when you are talking to Pitbull and helping him understand the financial aspects of what he's doing and the deals, you had said in an interview that you had created a database system for clearing records and keeping the song splits organized. So especially for an artist that you are primarily representing and doing a lot of these deals, talk to us a little bit about what that system is and how it applied to really help you stay organized in what you were doing.
Sure. So one of the things that happens in contemporary pop music, and I think Armando was certainly at the forefront with features, is a particular song whereas singer-songwriters such as Bob Dylan wrote all the music and lyrics and recorded. Very, very simple to paper up the rights for that particular recording. But now it is very common that a pop song will have 10 writers, 12 writers, maybe even more. Those writers are represented by various publishers. So you could have 3, 4, 5, 6 different publishers. There may be a sample on it. And if there's a sample, then you have to deal with the owner of the master recording of the sample and the owner of the publishing, the publishing aspect that you interpolate. And so you need to keep all of those things straight as well. You'll have a producer, you may have a featured artist. So you could, at the end of the day, have 1.5 to 2 dozen contractual relationships for one single recording. So in order to keep that straight, I created my own proprietary Excel database where I went through each song, and I really took this from a logical approach. I thought to myself, okay, what's involved in this particular song? And so what I just told you, I would put. So I set up columns for all the different writers, so I would know the splits, who their publishing companies were, who their lawyers were, who their PROs were. I would do the same thing for the producer, for the featured artist, for the samples. So I had all of that on one page. And then I created a summary sheet where I imported each of these data points that I had to be able to create label copy. So when we would turn an album in to the label, we would be able to give them all of the information in one place, and then I would have all of the contracts done, finished, signed in PDFs on a Dropbox so I could forward it to them. So the entire cleared album would be submitted to the label before the album came out, which, by the way, as I was told by the label, this was really uncommon because most of the time they're still clearing things after an album comes up. So by creating the system, I created efficiencies, I had template agreements, and it was very easy to have my staff plug and play. And then when I had to get on the phone with lawyers on the other side, I did that in order to get those albums cleared.
No, you'd be just like heaven sent if I was on the side of the label and we were talking about this. So I do a lot of catalog sales, or at least lately I have.
Yes.
And one of the issues we commonly will run into, regardless of what side you're on, is just clearance, right? So making sure that we have all the contracts and making sure we understand what rights carry with the music.
Chain of title.
So absolutely. And so the fact that you had done that due diligence, again, why? Going above and beyond for your client, you were making your client look fantastic at the end of the day. So then let's talk about, as it comes to, we say masters and selling and this kind of thing. So with Pitt's career, how important has owning his music been to him? Is that a big thing? Has he had the big fight with labels he signed with early on and they own the rights to his music?
So, I mean, some of those things are privileged and I can't really get into details, but let me just talk generically for all artists. I mean, I think that if you can own your own masters, it's great because you have complete control over what you're going to do with them. And so, most don't. If they've signed a major label, the labels are going to own it. Getting a label to give you back rights is a very, very a big uphill battle to go and do. But the importance of owning it is now. It's a great time to sell, or it was. The market's gone down significantly in the last couple of months. But if you own them, you could sell them for quite a big multiple. And again, if you own it, it's an asset you can pass on to your kids and to your heirs. So ownership is always better. It's like, do you want to rent a house or do you want to own a house? Always better to own it.
Yeah, no, and we have, the Kanye West of the world and Taylor Swifts who do become, very public and vocal about their frustrations with the fact that even though they are the big stars, right? Because isn't that the trade-off, Leslie? Isn't it that artists sign with record labels and record labels, when they knock it out of the park and make you a big star? Well, that was the exchange, right? So you invested in us, we invested in you, we own the music. And I know that, you are an advocate for artists, but I think that something that I hear, and you might agree with the sentiment, is that, record labels aren't necessarily the villain. I think the thing that we can say maybe there's a mistake on, or there's an oversight, is that sometimes artists don't understand what that relationship is and what they're giving up.
Yeah. So I got my start, after law school, I worked for BMG for 7 years. I was general counsel of the Latin division. So I've been on the major label, multinational side. And I think the way that I have come to look at these things is I see record labels very much like I see venture capitalists in tech deals. So you have a great technology, you need money to get it out there. A venture capitalist comes and invests. The venture capitalist, once it goes public, makes the lion's share. The founder maybe makes 10, or if he keeps 15%, he's thrilled. And no one complains about that. That's really not that much different than the business relationship between a label and an artist. A label will go and invest, recording costs, marketing costs, etc. If they invest millions of dollars and blow someone up into a big star, at the end of the day, should someone who has taken that risk to make that investment, because the labels lose a lot, should they all of a sudden have the rights pulled out from under them? And should the artist all of a sudden own that? I don't think that's necessarily a fair transaction. And again, I'm very, very pro-artist, and now I only represent artists, but I try to look at things objectively and what the business relationship is. If the artists put up all of their own money, they'd own it all. They'd also be taking the risk. And so to a certain extent, an artist having someone else put up the money using other people's money is not a dumb business move. It's actually, I think, quite smart, because the artist then makes a lot of money on touring. If they're a touring artist, that's where most of the money is made. The labels have gotten smarter and take a percentage of touring now with 360 deals. But it's important. I think sometimes people get caught up in the labels are the villains. They screwed over the artist, but what they don't see is that the artist risked perhaps millions of dollars they could have easily just lost.
Right. Yeah. And, I guess the way I say it is just, understand what you're getting into. Like anything else, if you're going to go take out a loan from the bank, and you're going to owe the bank $500,000, understand what the terms of the contract. And if that's what you're going to do, great. If you want to stay independent, understand it might just be a much more difficult path, and you won't have some of the luxuries that sometimes do come with, being with a bigger label. All right. So being respectful of your time, I'm going to hit you with one more question, and I'm going to let you get out of here. So there's when it comes to representing artists, one of the unique things that some attorneys do, especially in entertainment, is when it comes to billing practices, they will take a percentage of artists' income versus just billing the artist on an hourly basis. What have you found in your career to be the better method, or what has worked better for you?
The answer is it depends. And it's funny, the dynamic that shifts amongst artists. Young artists are more than happy to give you a percentage. The minute they start making a lot of money and start cutting the checks for the percentage, they want to shift to hourly. Right. By contrast, young artists will not want to pay hourly. So it's somewhat all over the place. I work with, a lot of different clients. Sometimes I work on flat fees, sometimes monthly fees, sometimes hourly, sometimes percentage. It's really just a hodgepodge. It depends on the artist, depends on the project that I'm working on.
Okay, I'm gonna sneak this one in. So there's a Grateful Dead cover band that you've been a part of for a while now, right? And you play bass, is that right?
Yeah, I'm not in the band anymore, but yeah, I did that for several years.
Okay, I was gonna say, where can we see you on tour?
I would like that. That's my retirement plan, is to go on tour with the jam band. That's what I'd like to do.
Perfect. Well, I can't wait for that. Leslie, thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to have you on the show again, and I just appreciate you being here.
My pleasure, Krystle. Thanks so much.